and welcome to Type 1 Thursday. We're gonna talk about something very kind of touchy today. I'm sure you've seen the title already, but that's okay. Today's topic is something as highly discussed as brittle diabetes. Does it exist? What is it? How can you get out of it? How can you help yourself with it? How can how common is it? And what on earth is brittle diabetes? The term is actually, I'm not too fond of the term, to be completely honest, because it can inflict a lot of blame, actually, that you are doing something wrong as a type 1 diabetic. It's usually type 1s who suffer from brittle diabetes, who live with it. And basically, brittle diabetes is, well, it's not a type, it's sort of a part of diabetes when it's completely and especially hard to control. So you have tons of really highs and tons of really lows. I'm sure some of you have experienced this and maybe even have a solution. So share your solutions to brittle diabetes, if that is a term for you, in the comments, and I'd be happy to chat with you there as well. Basically a blood sugar roller coaster, and as I said, this term can be very negative in a way because it really puts personal blame on the person with diabetes, which sometimes, and especially if you're having a rough time and if it's gotten so far that you are labeled a brittle diabetic, that is sort of the last thing you need to be blamed for your bad control as well. So it's a roller coaster, and there is, of course, as always with diabetes, there's a mental part, there's an emotional part to it, of course, and there's a physical aspect to it as well. So these are really not, needed. You don't need to be blamed by healthcare professionals as well. Why does brittle diabetes happen, and to whom does it happen? Well, it can be a whole myriad of things. It can be improper medication or improper medication use. You maybe are not taking enough medication, or maybe not in the right way. It can be stress, of course. I always say that stress is the blood sugar killer #1. And so also in this case, it can be really that your brittle diabetes is stress related, and that you need to, first of all, maybe learn a little bit more about stress management. And secondly of all, know how to manage your blood sugars and your insulin intake during those stressful times. It can, of course, also be something a little bit more serious, like an eating disorder, or it could be a gastrointestinal issue, like if you have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, for example, and you're digesting food in a very unregular way. Or if it is maybe gastroparesis, which is, of course, a complication of diabetes, when the stomach doesn't empty out the food in a nice and rhythmic pattern so that you get erratic blood sugars up and down. It can also have to do with your insulin sensitivity, of course. So that is another factor to keep in mind. However, these things can, of course, all be controlled if you just know how. So there is always an upside, but I want to hear from you and see what your solutions are. I found this statistic today, and I, of course, statistics always, underline a point, right? So about 3 out of 1,000 people with type 1 diabetes do have brittle diabetes. So it's not a very common diagnosis or a label, but it seems to be most prevalent in newly diagnosed teens who haven't really come to terms with their new life as people with diabetes, and maybe can't really handle all aspects of it on their own just yet, because they just haven't learned. I have a story about brittle diabetes as well. As you know, for 26 years, my blood sugar was a complete roller coaster, and it was on my medical file, there was a big, sticker with brittle diabetes on it for a very long time, because my blood sugars were really up and down and up and down, and to my knowledge, I did not have that much stress as a younger person. I did not have an eating disorder, I did not have gastrointestinal issues, I did not have celiac. It still claims that I don't have celiac, although I can tolerate gluten at all. I don't have gastroparesis. So what could it have been? Well, in my case, it was that I had the wrong playbook. So I was told to eat a certain amount of carbs, which I did, as a good diabetic should, and that didn't suit me. That didn't suit me, and I could never figure out the proper way of dosing insulin to it, because it varied from day to day. It wouldn't matter if I ate exactly the same thing day after day after day. I couldn't handle it, so that I could never figure it out. Even if I ate the same things over and over again, I could never figure out how much insulin to take, because it would vary from 8 units to 10 units to 12 units to 15 units maybe one day, and then go back to 3 the other, or the next. So it was really, really difficult, and that's why, how my blood sugars became so unpredictable. And the solution for me, as you may or may not know, was to actually skip the carbs, or as much of the carbs as possible, because the body doesn't really need it, and why stress my system with more of them than necessary when clearly we don't get along too well. So for me, it was an easy solution in that way. It doesn't mean that it would be the same for you or for, whoever else. So I really think that in order to get out of this, I really think that you need to work with a healthcare professional that you trust, that you can talk to, that you can be open and honest with, and whom you can communicate your goals with, because it's not always so easy to find these people. And if you find one, grab hold of them and never ever let them go. I think that is the first step to finding out how to get out of your brittle diabetes labelness. And then I think there is a very, very individual case of lifestyle changes that can improve this, and it really is according to your own needs. So is food the problem? Is the nutrition the problem for you? And that's why you're having erratic numbers, whether it is, gastrointestinal or medication, or, you can't match it or whatever, like in my case, which is fine. Like it doesn't make you a bad diabetic. It just makes it that much more challenging, and there are ways to figure it out. Or is it medications? Do you not know enough about your medications and how to use it, or you're not comfortable in using the medications that you have been put on your own, so that you can be quick and flexible with changes and tweaks and turns? Or is it a movement thing? Like, are you not maybe moving enough, or are you not moving in a way that is fun for you, or are you not perhaps knowing how to handle your medications in combination with movement, and that creates a roller coaster blood sugar? For example, there's that too. Or is it a mindset thing? Are you just thinking, well, doesn't matter what I do anyway? This sounds very familiar, because this is where I was stuck for a long, long time as well. It doesn't matter what I do anyway, so I don't really care. And then that's it with that. I'll just be a brittle diabetic, and I won't have take any responsibility for my own care, which is, it's one way to go, but maybe not the most proactive way to go. Or is it really a case of stress management? Is it maybe that you are too stressed, or you have something very stressful in your life that you're not realizing is stressful? Or do you not know how to manage your stress? Do you not have these activities where you can just switch off and regenerate and recuperate in your life? I'm really looking forward to reading your experiences about and with and of brittle diabetes, and I can't wait to chat with you in the comments. And until next week on Type 1 Thursday,